Hello guys, next video tutorial. In this one we're going to have a look at setting up a door and a trigger system. So the player stands on a trigger and the door opens. The player leaves the trigger and the door closes behind him, or her for that matter. Alright, we're gonna be using Kismet in this particular tutorial, so if this is your first time using Kismet, it should be a nice introduction. I will be producing another video tutorial that focuses entirely on Kismet, so if you just bear with us for now, and you should be fine. Right, okay, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is bring in a door. So we're going to go into the content browser, and we're going to look for static meshes, and we're going to search for a door. Alright, that brings up a load of search results. I'm not going to bother setting up walls and doorways and things like that. We're just going to go for the basic premise of setting up a door. I will teach you how to do it. I'll pass you the ball and you run with the ball. Run like the wind with the ball. Alright, okay, so I'm going to get this static mesh right here, which is a door, and I'm going to click and drag and drop it in. I'm just going to spin it around. There we go. Cool. Now the problem is this is a static mesh, so as the name would suggest, this mesh cannot move as it is. So we're going to have to do something to replace this static mesh, and to do that we can very easily replace it with something else which is known as an interpactor, and an interpactor can move. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to unselect this from the content browser, and I'm just going to get out of here and clear my search terms. And I'm going to show you a cool little trick that you can do to very quickly replace your static mesh, just in case you might have built a level with static meshes and you need to replace them with interpactors. So to replace this static mesh with an interpactor, I'm just going to show you something very quickly before we do that. I'm going to close the content browser down, and if we have a look in our 4 viewports mode, you can see that the wireframe for this static mesh is actually a blue color. Now I'm just going to go back to the content browser, and I'm going to right click on, I'm just going to get rid of that there, I'm just going to right click on the mesh itself, on the door in the scene, and we're going to go and find it in the content browser. So if we click on that button, the content browser will automatically go to the location, the very specific package where this static mesh is located. Cool, so it's automatically selected it for us in the content browser. So I'm going to right click again on the static mesh that's in the scene, and we're going to go replace with add interpactor, and there's the file name for the door. So we'll click on add interpactor. Looks like it hasn't done anything here, but if we look in our other viewports, you can now see that this wireframe has gone pink. So any static mesh has got a teal or a blue wireframe. There's the cube right there, static mesh. And any interpactor has got a pink wireframe, so you can tell very easily that it is in fact an interpactor. Alright, that's great. So we've got our interpactor in place. Now we need to set up our trigger to start off with. So we'll just use one trigger for now. So I'm just going to right click where I want my trigger to go. I'm going to go add actor, add a trigger. That's great. I'm just going to position my trigger where I want it to be. That will do. I'm going to press F4 to open up its properties, and I'll just close these down so you can see where you need to go. We're going to go into trigger, and then I'm just going to move this along. We're going to go into cylinder component, and we're going to have a look at collision radius. So I can actually raise and lower this number to shrink and expand the collision radius of this particular trigger. So I think that will do for me. I can close that down now. I'm finished with that, and we've got our trigger in place. So now I'm going to go into Unreal Kismet, which is this K button right here, highlighted in green just next to the content browser. I'm going to open up Unreal Kismet. That brings up this window. So in this main window right here, I'll explain a few things about Kismet as we go, but don't worry, I will do a proper video tutorial on Kismet specifically. So if we just follow along for now. So with my trigger selected in the scene, this is important. So I'll select the trigger in the scene. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to come down to new event using trigger 1, which is the trigger that I've got selected. Now yours might say trigger 0 or trigger 2. That doesn't really matter. Mine just says trigger 1. And I'm going to use the touch command. So if I click on touch, this brings up the event. Alright, so this is the event. This is the thing that happens in order to trigger the action. The action would be the door opening, and the event is the player stands on the trigger. Cool, alright, that's great. We're just going to come down and have a look at these options right here. If we have a look at sequence event, we can see maximum trigger count, and the tooltip does say how many times this event can be activated, and we do need to set it to 0 for an infinite number of times. If we just leave it at 1, it will just activate the sequence once, and then it won't be able to activate it again. If we want this to happen an infinite number of times, we just simply put 0 in, and that's going to set up our trigger the way that we want it to be. Okay, cool. So the next thing we need to do is just select our interpactor door in the scene, and we're going to go right click and we're going to make a new matinee. I'm just going to hold Control and Alt to do a group select and move these things over. So the way this works is you've got outputs on the right hand side, outputs here, and then we've got inputs on the left hand side. So outputs go into inputs, alright? And it all travels from left to right. Okay, so we've got our matinee here, and we've got our door here, so we're just going to double click on matinee to open it up. And this is your matinee window, which basically allows us to animate certain types of objects. So we need to get this door to move up and down. So the first thing I need to do, making sure that I've got my door selected, I'm going to right click in this left hand box right here, the dark grey, and we're going to go and make a new empty group. I'm going to call this group door underscore 001. In fact, if you don't put an underscore in and just put door space 001, it will replace it with an underscore for you. Alright, that's great. So we've got our group set up. Now we need to set up a movement track. So we're going to right click on our group door 001, and we're going to come down here and we're going to add our new movement track. So we add the new movement track. This movement track comes in with a keyframe already, and that keyframe has recorded the door in its current position, so its closed position. We need to make another keyframe for the door in its open position. So I'm just going to take my playhead here and scroll along the timeline till I get to about 2 seconds. Let's see. Yep, there we go. Bang on, 2 seconds. Fantastic. Alright, so I'm just going to move the door up into its open position. I'm going to add a keyframe by pressing the add keyframe button right at the top left there, just underneath file, and that's added another keyframe. So as I scroll through the playhead, through the timeline, sorry, using the playhead, we can see that the door moves up and down in between our two keyframes. Alright, that's fantastic. Now, there is something that we're going to have to do a little bit later on, but I'll come back to it later, and I'll show you what happens. Okay, so we're going to close matinee down for now, and we'll come back to it later. So, just to get this working, what we can do is we've got various different commands here. We've got touched and untouched, and this one is currently empty. So what this is saying is when the trigger is touched, it's going to play this matinee. Alright, so we can try that out right away. I'm just going to move this down here. I'm going to press the play button, and we're going to jump in. My trigger's here, so I'm going to walk forward, stand on the trigger, and the door opens. Now at the moment we haven't set it up to close, so when I do leave the trigger, nothing happens. So I'm going to close that down now. So we're going to go back to matinee, and we're going to take the untouched output and we're going to plug it into the reverse input for matinee. And that basically means that when it's touched, it's going to play the sequence. When it's not touched, it's going to reverse the sequence. Alright. Now, there is one thing that we do need to change in matinee, but we'll come to that shortly. So I'm just going to close matinee down. It's now minimized down here. And I'm going to press play. And I'm going to run around to my trigger. I'm going to walk into the trigger. That triggers the matinee sequence. Door opens. As I leave the trigger, it closes again. Now, one problem that we've got is when I stand on it and I leave it. Oh, no, that's fine. When I do stand on it and I leave it. No, that's fine. Alright, okay, that's great. Fantastic. Alright, so there you go. That's a nice, easy way to set up a matinee sequence using Kismet, using triggers and interpactors. We'll do another video tutorial on how we can use a different type of trigger so that the player has to press a button. We can set it up with multiple triggers. We can even do combination locks as well. Okay, alright, thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.